What's up, everybody? It is Moose, Brian, and Jake here from OccupyFantasy.com, at OccupyFantasy on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, you name it, we're probably on it. Again, I'm Moose at the left of your screen at CFB_Moose. At the top right of your screen, we have Brian at BrianJesterFF on Twitter. How are you today?
What's up, Moose? Feeling good, man. Big UFC slate, UFC 259. Tons of great fights. 15 fights on the card. I'm feeling good, man. 200K up top on DraftKings. We got some bigger prizes on FanDuel as well. Really pumped for it.
Yeah, it should be a hell of a fight, a bunch of fights. I'm really excited for it. And at the bottom right of your screen, we have Jake, the owner of MMADFS.com, also writes the daily plug for OccupyFantasy.com. At DFS_MMA is his Twitter username. Jake, how are you tonight?
Good, man. I'm ready for the slate, dude. This looks like the slate of the year. So, I mean, fingers crossed that nothing gets changed between now and 2 hours from now when we lock it up. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I've been building on and off. There's so many fights and so many ways to play the slate. I think I'm just going to have to pick one way and just go with it and just figure it out from there. But that's why we're all here, to chop it up. That's why you all are here, to ask questions or comments, anything like that. If you just want to drop by and say hello, you can do that too. Again, if you are new to the channel, go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, and bell notification to be notified of when we upload any new videos or go live. And you can check out the daily plug at OccupyFantasy.com. You can check out Jake's sheet at MMADFS.com. So let's jump into it, guys. 15 fights, 3 5-rounders. Brian, I'll start it off with you. What's your expectation for this type of slate?
The initial thought is, and you never want this to happen generally, but my first thought was, man, I hope some fights get canceled early in the week, because 15 fights are so many. And, when you're looking for leverage and you're breaking down every single fight, you can always find reasons to play every single fighter for the most part. And it really becomes a lot of tough decisions when there are 15 fights. Now add in the fact that there are 3 title fights, 3 5-round fights. And now we have a bunch of decisions to make, because, the usual slate has just 1 5-rounder. We know we get that into 75% plus of our lineups. But how does that change when there are 3 of them on the card? Now that there are 15 fights, it gives us a chance that maybe some of these non-5-rounders end up in the optimal lineup instead of the 5-round title fights. So, Jake, I know you and I have looked at the optimal approach for these large slates. We've also looked at some data for the slates with 3 title fights. So what were some of the takeaways that we found?
Yeah, man. So I think the main thing we noticed, which is probably kind of intuitive and obvious for most people, is the majority of the field went 2 favorites and 1 underdog from the 3 title fights last time, which, I mean, it makes sense. Like, it's really hard to plug in all 3 favorites, but most people want to get a piece of every 5-round fight. So the second best thing is, all right, well, maybe a dog wins. So then I'm going to go 2-1. And then some people are like, oh, I'll be contrarian and I'll go 1 favorite and 2 dogs. And most people, that's the direction they go. So by not doing that, you can already get a lot of leverage.
Yeah, and which dogs do you think are going to be the most popular tonight? Obviously, we don't think Anderson is going to get much ownership at all, despite being in a 5-round fight. But I imagine Sterling is the most popular we have.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think that's a pretty easy one to look at. I mean, the odds are closer, the pricing is closer. I mean, Sterling has been on like a great run. He's been beating all these great fighters, and Jan, he hasn't really beat anyone that great. He beat a couple old guys to get the title in Uriah Faber and Jose Aldo. So now, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that think Sterling can win here, and there's some discussion about Jan being able to beat Adesanya with the weight moving up. So, I mean, Jan will probably have decent ownership, but for sure Sterling's going to be the top owned.
Yeah, and Moose, I'll kick it back to you with this final thought. So Jake said not playing 2 favorites, 1 underdog, not playing 1 favorite, 2 underdogs. I think the safest way to have a unique high upside lineup on this type of card is to play a maximum of 2 5-round fighters in your lineups, and I think you can make an exception if Megan Anderson's in there. If Anderson's in there, you could probably have 3 of them just because of her 10 to 15% projected ownership.
Yeah, I'm looking in the model right now. Megan Anderson projected at 14% on DraftKings and just 1% on FanDuel. If you want to be absolutely nuts and play her, I mean, I won't fault you for it. Hashtag bad plays only. And so, yeah, if you put her in, you could definitely play the other two favorites from the 5-round fights.
Yep. And so, dude, I don't know, guys. I don't know what's going on here, but someone likes Anderson out there. Her money line has dropped precipitously late in the week here. Now Nunes only sits as a -900 favorite.
Only -900.
Only, yeah.
Yeah, and as Julian puts in the chat, Nunes is going to be owned in a huge percentage if you ask me at -900. I mean, Jake, I'll just ask you, you know, Nunes tops the Occupy model on DraftKings and second on FanDuel, and projected for over 60%, 50% on DraftKings and FanDuel. I mean, this seems like a person where, I mean, she's the cover of the plug. You can't really, she's in the spot where you can't really fade her.
Yeah, for sure, man. She's the best play in the slate, and it's not close.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Brian, once we get back talking about ownership, you know, these are always going to be concentrated on the 5-round fights. But once we get out of that, ownership's a little spread out. And so that's where we can really get some leverage plays for large field tournaments, large field high-risk tournaments. What are some of your fighters that you think have that low ownership that you'll be able to get a bunch of leverage on?
Yeah, it's really nice because, you know, from a large field perspective, which is where I'm playing, and I'm always trying to get unique lineups, I love finding the 10 to 20% owned fighters that I can double the field, and that's not a huge allocation in my 150, and still have a major edge if they pick up the W or get a finish. Fortunately, on this slate, like, we have close to 20 fighters projected for sub 20% ownership, which means if you're playing a bunch of lineups, right, doubling the field means just getting 20% in each of your lineups. So for me, and just looking at the model, a lot of the fighters that our model likes, that I like, that aren't even reaching, right? Like, normally Jake and I talk, and I'm like trying to convince everyone to play really, really bad plays at, you know, 10 to 15% ownership. I don't even have to do that today because, Jake, there are guys like, and I'm just naming some names here, like Medic, the Alaskan guy making his debut, his opponent Cruz, Bautista, I think, can get it done. The model likes Lemos a lot. And then even if you drop down, or even if you look at the top of the board, Makachev, again, I sent the pronunciation guide to Moose. I can't even pronounce it myself. But
so you get for not sending it to me.
I know Makachev, right? Makachev, who's at the top and hasn't had a ton of great DraftKings scores. All these fighters are less than 20% owned, and they all have huge upside.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jake.
For sure. I was just going to say, for sure, man. Like, normally we're looking at leveraging guys that are like 40, 50% owned, and this time we're looking around, and after you get to the 3-round fights, and there's only a couple guys even in the 20s. So, I mean, it's basically everyone's a low-owned play today almost.
Yeah, who's some of the ones you're looking at, Jake, as quote-unquote low-owned?
Yeah, so, I mean, one guy that's not super low-owned, but he's one of the rare leverage plays is Song Yadong. I think Kyler Phillips is going to be the highest owned underdog in the 3-round fights. And he has never beat anyone who's won a UFC fight before. Whereas Song Yadong is a ranked fighter who has just been taking on tough fighter after tough fighter. This guy, like, started training with Shaolin monks when he was 9 years old. Like, they sent him off from his family to become a fighter at 9. Like,
you have no life choice. You are going to be a fighter.
Wow. I mean, apparently he was down with it. It wasn't like they just banished him. He was like, yeah, I want to go. So he's like devoted his entire life to being a fighter. He went pro when he was 16. Like, some of us weren't, you know, we were all in high school, and this guy's like a pro fighter. Like, that was his job. I mean, he's a beast, man. So everyone's on Kyler Phillips. I mean, we're projecting him to be like 29% owned. Song's going to come in like 17, somewhere around there. I think Song's a great play, man. He's had a couple lower scoring decisions lately, but he's gone against really tough guys, and I think this is going to be a high volume brawl.
Yeah, you pretty much hit it there on point. Looking in the chat, awesome to see a bunch of people here chatting it up, trying to figure out what time it is in Europe. I can't do that math for you. Sorry. Mackenzie says that one girl was -950 favorite a few months ago and got beat, even though she's not Nunes. Now, you know, and Jake, it's a good point. We talk about, you know, we've even put it on Twitter, it's a max allocation slate, but still, we're only recommending about 6 to 8% of your bankroll to play on this slate. So don't go too heavy. contest selection and bankroll allocation is still absolutely key. Let's jump over to the next topic we want to talk about. And, there's so many fighters on the slate. Can't play everyone. Is there, Brian or Jake, whoever wants to answer this, what are some of the fighters that we're going the opposite way? We're not giving leverage. We're probably not even going to play them at all.
Jake, you have a much stronger opinion on these guys than I do, so please take this one.
Yeah. You can't ask Brian who are the bad plays because he'll just read off his exposure list. I think there are a few fights that I'm not really looking at having much exposure. So the Dominic Cruz Kenny fight, that's one that I think it's going to go to a decision. Cruz he's fought in like basically all 5-round fights so far in the UFC. Like he came in and fought in a title fight in his UFC debut like a decade ago. He also took 4 years off before coming back and losing to Cejudo lately. So I think that's a good one. I think that goes to a decision. I think the Cara France Bontorin fight is another one that likely ends in a lower scoring decision for DFS. And then the hot take of the week is I think the main event. I think that the Izzy Jan fight is going to end up lower scoring, and that's one that I'm looking at fading.
Yeah, man. Yeah, okay. You say fading. Like, what does that mean for your lineups? Are you playing, half of their projected ownership as your exposure, or are you not playing it at all?
I'm going real low, like a third to a quarter of the projected ownership.
Well, the good thing is you'll be living screenshot life at like 12:30.
Oh yeah,
or 12:30 a.m.
That's what I'm doing. I'm just posting after the Nunes fight, like the slate's over.
But again, like if that's the fight, if there's one fight that's going to bust, it probably is that one. Adesanya up a weight class, typically low volume, and we've talked about this before, and it's incredibly tilting. That again, like preface this by saying Adesanya, one of the best fighters in the entire world, obviously, but for DFS purposes, his scores have been propped up by just an insane number of knockdowns. And Blachowicz has been knocked down once in his career. Very unlikely that he gets multiple knockdowns in this fight. So Adesanya is going to have to get an early finish or just an unusual amount of volume to pay off his price tag at 45% ownership or whatever it is. So I agree with you there. I have less than half. I'm going half the field on Adesanya. I'll be under on Blachowicz as well. And again, if they produce outlier performances, so be it. But I'm willing to bet against outlier performances against high-owned fighters. This is a rare spot move.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely interesting. There's so many caveats to each fight. It's going to be very hard to play everyone. So pick your spots on who you can and can't play. Ken is in the chat. It says, "Song your dong tonight." And great Circa merch, Moose. So thank you for the alley-oop, Ken. Yeah, if you are in Nevada or Colorado, definitely check out Circa Sports. They are awesome enough to send me some free gear. So always love to support their business. Awesome. On to the next one. Jake, I know you play on FanDuel more than me and Brian play on. And so the scoring system is a little bit different. You have to have the MVP. And it's going to be tough if you're playing these huge high-owned fighters at MVP. If you play like Nunes at 24% projected ownership. But who are some people that aren't in the 5-round fights that can get you there at MVP?
Yeah, so I think one thing is you're looking for guys that are going to defend a lot of takedowns. So the number one on that list this week is Joseph Benavidez. He's going against Askar Askarov, who averages 11 takedowns per fight, and he averages 9 missed takedowns per fight. So I think that's a sneaky one. Askarov looked terrible at weigh-ins. He was the only guy to miss weight. Benavidez is coming off back-to-back early losses, but they were against Figueiredo. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to hold it against him. He is old. He's 36, so he's one of those guys where, like, maybe he shows up and he's washed, but his last 3 winning performances, he all scored 100 points or more, and he had 2 knockouts in 2 of his last 3 wins. So I think he's kind of sneaky, man. He's only, I think 6 of his 7 career losses have come against the champs in his division. So, I mean, I think he's probably got a chip on his shoulder after losing back-to-back fights. I mean, it's kind of like a perfect storm here going against a guy that misses a ton of takedowns, missed weight, and now he's on FanDuel at, what is he, $15 on FanDuel? I mean, dude, if he gets 9 takedowns defended, that's like an extra 27 points right there. And if he gets a knockout on top of that, I mean, he could have a sneaky high ceiling.
Dude, I love that call, Jake. Benavidez is in a really good spot. Again, coming off 2 losses, but against the best fighter in his division, against a guy who missed weight at a really cheap price tag, and we project him for just 14 to 15% ownership on both sites. And to your point, if you're playing the big GPP on FanDuel, just 1% projected at the MVP spot. So, I mean, Benavidez, one of the best options in that mid-range on both sites for sure. Absolutely love that. And I think there's a fight. We haven't talked about fights to target yet, but I'd be surprised if there's not an early finish in the Medic and Cruz fight. Both guys very inexperienced. I'd love to hear your take on that fight because we do have Medic coming off the heralded Alaskan regional scene and Cruz getting KO'd instantly in his debut. So it's an interesting fight that I think should have a pretty high pace.
Yeah, man, I think that's a great fight to target. It's hard to know who wins it. I mean, we've got Medic is a decent favorite. He's not a massive favorite. He's like 185 favorite. So I mean, it could definitely go either way. But he's literally never really fought anyone good. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys watch the Alaska fights, but they're a joke. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, we should basically just throw out all those fights and just say this guy had one finish on the Contender Series, and now he's coming into the UFC facing a guy that's coming off a 1-point DraftKings performance in his UFC debut where he got knocked out in the first round, which is actually good. I mean, that's going to keep his ownership down. So, I mean, Cruz has 1 UFC fight. Medic has 0. It's going to be one of the higher volume fights on the slate if the numbers hold up. I mean, I think it's got shootout potential written all over it. Either guy could win. Either guy could put up a massive score. I kind of prefer Cruz personally. I just think he looked a little bit better in the fights I watched. But, I mean, Medic, all of his wins have come by finish, and he's 6-0. So take that for what it's worth.
I mean, Alon Cruz is probably the best tournament play at 7,300, less than 10% projected ownership on DraftKings. And then if you like the favorite and you're looking for pivots at the top of the salary range, Medic is just 17% projected on DraftKings. This fight as a whole not projected to be highly owned, but both guys can get a first round finish here and score 100 points and be pivotal to tournament lineups.
Yeah, that would be great, and Model pretty much agrees with that too. So always good to check that out. We'll be here for about 13 more minutes. So if you're new here, you don't know who we are, we're OccupyFantasy.com. Jake is with the MMA DFS.com. You can check us out at OccupyFantasy.com. Check out the Occupy model where we rank every fighter. If you're into mass multi-entry, we do have a lineup builder that is included in the subscription that you can go ahead and use that to build up to 150 lineups. It's really awesome. Let's see here. We got some people in the chat. What's up, John? He says, Rummy here. Sam says, is Nunes pretty much a lock for a cash game MVP? And I think everyone in here would be in agreement to that, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Bravdini says, so Benavidez could be this week's Lawrence.
Lawrence dominated. I guess from a DraftKings score perspective, I don't think he'll score as high as Lawrence did. But Jake, I think we both agree that Benavidez he's a good play on both sites, but a better play on FanDuel.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just look at the takedowns defended. He's not going to get a ton of grappling like Lawrence. He's not like a takedown guy. I mean, we're looking for a finish and takedowns defended with Benavidez, not for him to land a ton of takedowns of his own.
Yeah, it's funny. The one guy in chat says, Jester, are you growing a mullet? And it's funny because I don't know which Jester he's talking about.
Rummy, yeah, man, the hair's looking rough. That's why I got the hat on, and I call it. I'm not gonna take the hat off, but it's very hillbilly wedding style. So
nice. Frederick says, Medic Cruz, would you have 100% exposure to this fight in MME? And I'll pass the one off to you, Jake.
Not 100.
Yeah, I think a lot, a good amount, but like,
yeah,
again, 15 fight slate, anything can happen. I wouldn't.
Right, I mean, Nunes would be the closest. I mean, Nunes is going to be pushing it, but no, I mean, yeah, we got 30 fighters. Like, you got to spread out some. Like,
yeah. Let's see here, and then Ken has a question for Jake. Do you have any guys where you really don't want to back or cheer for, but you know it's a great DFS play tonight? It's an interesting question.
So like, who do I personally dislike on this slate, but I think could be good? I mean, I don't think there's anyone that I'm like so biased on that I'm like betting against that could go off. But Casey Kenny, he's been kind of acting like a tool lately. So I'm kind of rooting against him, but I don't think he goes off.
Nice. And then Timothy here says, Brian, how did you do in League of Legends this morning?
I was close, got chalked at the end, lost a little bit, didn't end up winning. So overall, no success.
Rip. And we'll talk about this here next. Frederick says, follow up. Who do you like in the Sterling Jan fight? And Brian, I guess you can answer that, and then we can talk about maybe some fights that we should have a lot of exposure to.
Sounds good. Also, just noticed someone thumbs down this video, so we got one dislike. Show yourself, coward, in the chat. Who disliked this? Who could
Casey
possibly
Kennedy.
dislike this? Yeah, it was Casey Kennedy's mom, just in the chat. Yeah. So Piotr Jan, Aljamain Sterling. I mean, if there is one fight you have 100% exposure to, it's probably this one.
Right.
I mean, both guys have a chance to score really highly. They're both a little underpriced on FanDuel just because of it's a closer money line. But Jan at $18, Sterling at $17. I mean, whoever wins is probably going to be the optimal over there. So I really like that fight. Again, it's relatively a relative coin flip. I'm not in the business of predicting outcomes of fights, and their ownership is so similar. Basically 43% each on DraftKings. Give me Sterling just because he's $600 cheaper, and maybe that gives us a little bit of uniqueness. I guess that's where I lean.
Yeah, I'll take Jan, just to take the other side there. But I think Jan probably wins, but Sterling's a decent play, especially on DraftKings.
Okay, cool. Jake, and I'll ask a follow-up question for you. Are there any other fights that you think we should have a lot of exposure to tonight?
So, I mean, I think you should have a lot of exposure to obviously all the main events. I mean, I think that's an easy call, but the Rakic Santos fight, I think that's a good one that you want to be heavily exposed on. I think Rakic has been basically a cheat code on DraftKings with the new scoring system because he just lays on people for 12 minutes and just throws 250 strikes on them. So especially on DraftKings, Rakic. He's also had fights where he went 1 for 9 on takedowns. So I think that makes Santos a good FanDuel play. I think that potentially the takedown defense could be sneaky. And I mean, Santos came back from that really bad knee injury and just got destroyed in his last fight. But he's still a really good fighter. I mean, he knocked out Jan. He's the only person to knock out Jan in the UFC, and he did it in the 3rd round. I mean, he's a good fighter. I mean, he's kind of old now, so I mean, he's kind of on that list of guys we're worried maybe he's washed, guy in their late 30s coming off knee surgery, but he's a powerful guy. Rakic has never been knocked out, but I think if it happens, I think Santos could get a round 2, maybe a round 3 knockout.
Okay, cool. Brian, is there any fights outside of those that Jake mentioned? Is there anything that you're on that you have a lot of exposure to?
Let me see here. I think that's mostly it. Maybe the Bautista-Jones fight, which seems kind of... I don't think a lot of people are going to be playing either one, especially Bautista. We got Bautista really, really projected low-owned at just 9%. And then maybe Jones gets some ownership down there just because of his last performance. But that was more of a fluky finish more than anything. And it's not like he's fought great competition in his pre-UFC days. So I think that fight goes overlooked, and I'll be overweight on both guys for tournaments.
Okay. See that. Cool. Yeah, so 5 more minutes, people. So if you have any more questions, definitely go ahead and get them in. Jake, I'll pass this one over to you. I know a lot of people like to do fight stacking. Don't do it in high risk, especially with 30 fighters. Definitely don't do that. But could any of these main event fights tonight be something you could do in low risk?
For sure, man. I mean, the last time that we had a 3-5 card fight was July 11th, and the cash line that I kind of joked about going into that was just play all 6 5-round fighters, and I did it to test it, and it just dominated. So I mean, maybe that's an anecdotal thing, but I think you want to go really heavy, 5. I mean, probably not 6. I think you can probably drop Megan Anderson out and then just play 5 main round fight, 5-round fighters, and then throw in one play you like on top of that. I mean, maybe if we tell enough people that, then everyone's just going to be splitting in cash and just paying the rake. But I think that's a good strategy tonight, is just jam in as many 5-round fighters as you can and then kind of fill it in with 1 1 or 2 max like other people.
That's crazy to think about.
It is crazy, but I agree. Like, you're guaranteeing basically 3 100-point scores in your lineup for the most part. So, and again, people are going to take shots and try to get sneaky and cash. I think just do that.
Right.
Wait, should we bring back the 3-leg parlay this week and see if we can hit it for once?
We have to, man. We got to. Moose is back. I mean, last time he's batting 100%.
Yeah, definitely. And I had one of the longest odds. So,
Yep.
All right. All right. Let's take a look here. I'll go last. I'll kick it off to you first, Brian.
Damn it. Okay. So I will go, and this is actually in the best bet section of the Daily Plug, OccupyFantasy.com. Click the UFC Daily Plug link that Jake writes. He lists all of his favorite bets that they've actually been smashing since he started writing the plug for us, even since he's been writing the sheet over at MMADFS.com. I'll go with, this is a 5-1 shot. It's Benavidez by knockout. We've been talking about him all stream. So give me Joseph Benavidez by knockout, plus 500 as the first leg of our stream parlay. Jake.
I like it, man, and I'm glad that I had 2 ready because that was one of my 2.
Tight.
I'm gonna go Islam sub. I think Dober's lost his last 3 losses have all come by submission. Islam's a really good wrestler. I think if he gets the fight to the ground, I think we're looking at a submission in the first 2 rounds. I don't know if it's gonna come in 1 or 2, so I'll just go anytime sub at plus 420.
And veteran move there, saying just his first name and not his last name.
Oh yeah. Came prepared.
I'm looking here, and
take us home, Moose.
I'm gonna say, let me get the pronunciation guide up again. Let's see here. Alon Cruz to win before decision at 3.5 to 1.
I like it.
Hell yeah, let's go. This is a great parlay, guys.
All right,
so
just
good.
Confirm. So the Cruz by KO, TKO, DQ decision, in the decision, whatever the hell that's actually called. Looks like plus 333 for me at the book that I have up. Brian, what was yours?
Benavidez by KO, plus 500 it looks like.
Okay, and then Jake, what was yours?
The Islam sub, it was plus 420 last time I looked. I don't know if the lines moved at all.
Nice.
Makhachev, however you say it.
Is that it? Yeah, Makhachev.
Yeah.
It's actually not that hard.
I'll ask this question to you, Brian, from Mr. Miyagi. He says, what's the best dogs not named Santos or Sterling?
Megan Anderson. No, I'm not gonna tell people that. I do think you have to play her. If you're playing 10 lineups, you got to get Megan Anderson in 1 or 2, just because of the line moves and the absolute chaos that it would cause if she wins in that fight. But the best actual dog, I think we've talked about it a couple of times here, is, in my opinion, Alon Cruz. Super low ownership, going against a very unproven fighter. Alon Cruz, I think, is the guy.
Okay.
I like it.
Nice. Jake, do you have any other dogs you can think of?
Yeah, man. I think Matthews is a sneaky value play. I mean, he probably doesn't get a finish here against Brady, but the last time this guy fought, he was a negative 715 favorite, and now he's a slight underdog. This guy's been in the UFC since he was like 18 or something, or 19. He has like 14 UFC fights. He's only 26 years old. He's going against Brady, who's 3-0 in the UFC. But Matthews at 6,900, man, that's way too cheap. Like, I think he could definitely win a decision here, score like 80 or 90 points, and be like a really good value play.
Okay, nice. I was actually just putting in the 3 bets that we all put in, so hopefully we can win this parlay.
I'm doing that too.
Yeah, and Ken says he just put 5 units on it. Thanks, guys.
Ken's gonna retire tomorrow.
Yep.
Hey, real quick. So I think we missed Sam's question in the chat. He said, "Is Jan Sterling stackable even on FanDuel?" Jake, I would argue that it is on FanDuel for low risk contests, not high risk, obviously, but for your low risk cash contest, I think it is. I don't know what you think.
I think it's almost mandatory for low risk. I mean, they're both priced sort of down. You know, normally we see like 5-round favorites priced at like $20, $22. You can get them both very reasonably priced. I think you pretty much have to stack that in low risk on FanDuel.
Yeah, because you can play a bunch of the cheaper fighters. Like if you just put in Nunes, Adesanya, Jan, and Sterling, that leaves you $11 left per player, and there are a couple fighters in that cheaper range that you could easily fit in.
Yeah, I think it's a good week for cash on both sides, which that's something I rarely say.
Nice. Cool. So it is 3:30 here, end of the show. If you guys have more questions, go ahead and check out the Discord, occupyfantasy.com/discord. Learn how you can become a member. If you want to read the daily plug, go check out, or the Occupy model, occupyfantasy.com is where you can check it out. You can check out Jake's sheet, which is completely free, at mmadfs.com. Appreciate everyone here joining. Brian, Jake, thank you so much for joining. Let's hopefully we can see some screenshots, get some sweat cams going on. But until next time, all of us here from Occupy Fantasy, have a good night.
Good luck.